Welcome to Impact Makers, the Crypto Sapiens podcast, where we spotlight the remarkable individuals shaping the crypto landscape and leaving a lasting impact on the world. Join us for captivating stories of breakthroughs, triumphs, and invaluable lessons learned as we explore the dynamic world of the public greats working hard to build a brighter future for us all. I'm your host, Jon Ruth, founder of Spark Ecosystems, building impact evaluation and certification tools, including Daracy and Hyperminter. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Anna Stone. Anna is a visionary leader at the intersection of finance and technology, reshaping the future of money to serve humanity. With over 13 years of experience in pioneering tech advancements, Anna has been instrumental in building and scaling innovative projects that challenge traditional financial systems and champion economic inclusion. As the executive director of GoodDollar and head of Web3 at eToro, Anna leads groundbreaking initiatives that leverage blockchain technology to democratize access to wealth. GoodDollar, recognized among the top 10 most utilized crypto projects globally, has empowered nearly 1 million people worldwide with the tools for financial literacy and participation. Under her leadership, this project has become a beacon of social impact, delivering a crypto-based universal basic income to foster equitable economic growth. Anna's strategic acumen is further exemplified by her tenure at Bancor, where as VP of Marketing, she steered the launch of the first Ethereum decentralized exchange, setting the stage for decentralized finance. Her expertise spans strategic marketing, business development, and product innovation, with a special focus on building sustainable, user-centric Web3 protocols and DAOs. A thought leader and advocate for a fairer financial system, Anna's work is driven by a profound commitment to creating a healthier, more resilient global economy that prioritizes people over profit. Her professional journey is a testament to her belief in technology as a force for good, capable of transforming lives and communities across the globe. Welcome to the show, Anna.
Wow, Jon, thank you for having me. Can I get access to that bio? I'm going to use it for basically everything I do. That was such a meaningful introduction. Thank you for that.
Anna is a great friend of mine who I'm so happy to have with us today. And we can start with, if there's anything that I missed in the intro. I think I captured a lot of the good stuff you've done, but if there's anything else you want to highlight, and then we'll go from there.
Let's just jump right into it. Let's get talking.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to start with all the guests and really learn about your origin story. Crypto is still a strange place to be for all of us, and we all have interesting journeys into it. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your origin story and how you ended up in crypto and Web3.
So like every other human, I've been trying to make sense of the world and make my own meanings from a young age. And for me, I was always interested in kind of like big picture systems thinking, and started my journey to understanding money as an undergrad, where I studied both philosophy and economics, if you will. And economics is a funny topic because it's just like philosophy, it's theory. It is theory that you learn, although it's taught in a very special way because it's about this precious thing called money, which we all know and understand and idolize and deem to be important. And so I would say my curiosity around money and behavior and culture and society really started from a young age. And I also was very inspired by my grandparents, who were very philanthropically minded with the concept of tikkun olam, to improve the world. It's old Jewish value to really focus on making the world a better place and to use your time on earth to do so. And so I would say that those two key influences from when I was 18, 19 actually drove me into working in money, and specifically at the intersection of lack of access to money and really trying to understand how, growing up in a place like New York City, we had so much and so much abundance, and in so many other corners of the world, there was so little. And recognizing that this was the result of, this wasn't the world as it is, this is the world that we've built, if you will. And if we can build it one way, that means we can build it back better or differently. I started off working in nonprofits, so always interested in economic development, but taking the philanthropic side. Worked for I worked on a project really interesting when I was in graduate school that was all about getting Visa cards into the favelas of Brazil, which, given what we do now with GoodDollar, which we'll discuss later about what's going on with GoodDollar with the favelas in Brazil, it's quite an interesting parallel. But those were the types of projects that I worked on, and this was the era of microfinance right after Mohammed Yunus had won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work with microfinance. And it was all about banking the unbanked. Like, we have all these unbanked billions of people out there. Now with technology, now with mobile technology, we have the opportunity to actually bank the unbanked through fintech. And so I've always been interested in that space, whether it's been through financial, again, nonprofits, or these projects that I did for different companies like Visa, like MasterCard. Fast forward a few years, I left that space, started to work really squarely in enterprise technology and data and selling technology through the enterprise. And that's where I'd say I got most of my software experience, but was always interested in money. And so in 2017, when Ethereum was exploding and all of a sudden blockchain really crossed over into, I'd say, like a mainstream conversation around what is crypto, what is blockchain, what could it enable, why should you care? For me, it was like game over. Like, this is the substrate. This is the thing. This is the tool that's going to enable us to build the better systems, more aligned to the values that we want to illuminate. This is what's actually going to break the monopoly on money, that's actually going to enable communities to generate and capture their own value. This is what's going to pave the way for capital formation. This is what's going to pave the way for access to new digital capital markets. So for me, once I looked there, I'd never look back, right? And once I learned about what was going on in the blockchain space, it wasn't relatively early. It was actually relatively late. It was in 2017. But I was fortunate enough to be living in Tel Aviv, which is where the Bancor founding team was working to launch, their famous technology of the world's first automated market maker and decentralized exchange, and joined that team in the leadership team there. And I've been off to the races working in Web3 ever since.
That's amazing.
So that's my journey.
Yeah. Hearing some of those details that I didn't even know about you, I can see how that like molds the way and kind of just steers you. It sounds like, especially from a young age with your grandparents. And I was listening to a couple podcasts where you've been on before and talked about your grandfather before. So I can really tell that's, it's important person in your life who really helped to mold that and teach you to be a giver in the world. And like, I think that's.
It's actually really interesting because my grandfather worked on the New York Stock Exchange, right? And his work at the New York Stock Exchange was actually, we're talking about the 70s and the 80s, and this was actually a firm that was really focused on making equities available to small scale buyers, right? So instead of making it not just so that institutions can buy and sell and access the exchange, but actually enabling the first generation of retail investors and doing so in a model that reduced the information asymmetry that exists, where the little guy gets the bad end of the deal, right? And so this was very much his core business, and enabled a lot for himself, enabled a lot for my family. That's what enabled me to get my education, etc. And in many ways, I see the work that I do as sort of a modern day digital, very frontier pioneer extension of that mission of actually, how do we make access to capital markets and wealth generating assets more accessible to more people?
Leads us really well right into GoodDollar, the primary project that you're working on. So for those out there that maybe haven't heard about GoodDollar, hopefully they all have, but you want to give us a little on what GoodDollar is and what you all are up to?
Sure. So GoodDollar is a project. We're actually like a veteran project now for crypto. We originally started the experiment in 2019, I would say. And GoodDollar was originally started as, like I said, a thought experiment, which was focused on how could we use public blockchain networks to actually enable a universal basic income. On a global scale, right? So universal basic income is a long-standing political concept. It's existed since the 1700s, but it's an approach to economic and societal change that's based around giving each individual person a certain amount of unconditioned income, and that is actually the most effective social support mechanism, more effective than, say, conditioned aid or aid in kind, etc., that people actually are able to make the best choices for themselves when they just have cash and they just have money to spend. And universal basic income is a pretty interesting concept because even though it's existed for a long period of time conceptually, it actually hasn't been that easy to do that many UBI pilots, right? Why? Because it's actually not that easy for a centralized authority to give money to people in any respect, right? And so, particularly leading up to 2019, and this is pre-COVID, right? There were a handful of different universal basic income experiments, all of which were relatively positive in their finding, right? Finding that giving UBI improves health, education, well-being, educational career prospects, all of the things, whether the pilot is happening in a relatively poor country, relatively wealthy country. So there were positive signs around the potential for UBI to make a real impact, but there was no actual practical tooling that would enable a universal basic income system to actually work and get money to people at scale. And so GoodDollar was really based around how do we use this concept of universal basic income to not only reduce, financial inequality is such a big topic, right? So it's the most extensive end goal. It's around reducing financial inequality, but in a more practical sense, how could we use the concept of universal basic income to actually help onboard people into Web3 and support what we knew was a really painful and expensive learning journey for people? So particularly thinking back to 2019, I'm coming off of running all the business stuff at Bancor. It's the first decentralized exchange. People have no idea what they're doing in non-custodial wallets. They have no idea what they're doing in terms of key management. They have no idea what they're buying, selling, executing. They have no idea how to operate on the blockchain, right? Like, this is really early days. This is pre-MetaMask having any sort of private key management tool. This is pre-front running protections. This is really very pioneer days. And so, especially coming off of this experience and seeing the volatility of the token market, both the terrible user experience, let's be frank, and then the volatility of the token market, we really asked ourselves, okay, how do we bridge the gap between what we know is the big potential, which is actually enabling anyone with a cell phone to be able to onboard in a permissionless way into this new area of digital asset finance, which we have very high conviction in, right? And the pitfalls and the realities of that experience, and how that is even further amplified when you're dealing with relatively poor populations that are even more vulnerable, who are very susceptible to, we're all susceptible to the motivation to get rich quick, right? But particularly, when you have less to lose, that risk tolerance even increases, right? So GoodDollar was really, I'd say, created out of that context, right? Which is, we have this approach for reducing financial inequality. It's called universal basic income. It's practically really difficult to do, and there's very little tooling. We know that blockchain is the best technology to build a system like that, because only through blockchain are we able to do something that's truly digital, truly global, and where efficiently it makes sense for, because sending less than $1 can cost less than $1, right? And coming out of the market context of the dirty days of DeFi and recognizing that this learning journey was going to be very challenging, very difficult, very expensive and scary and painful for many, many people. And how actually could we create a project and a product that lowers the barriers to entry of what it means to get into crypto, of what it means to get into a non-custodial wallet, what it means to get tokens, what it means to get tokens in such a way that encourages you to use them and use them over time, and really facilitates this larger journey of financial empowerment for people in this new weird world of Web3.
I think, you said so much there, but it is just such a powerful tool. You talk about so many people that are unbanked, and all of a sudden now we do have this way we can begin to bank people all around the world in a borderless way that isn't tied to a centralized government, that isn't necessarily even tied to a centralized currency. And so it really opens up all this potential for people that simply doesn't exist without it. But you're so right. There's so much more risk, because to lose $100 is a major thing for so many people in the world, versus you or I to lose $100. It's probably still going to have a roof over our head and food to eat, etc. And yet those are the people that are so much more susceptible to those exploits.
Absolutely. And I think we're also taking advantage of what it actually, we take for granted in the US, what it means to be able to execute a digital transaction of $100, right? So it's if you are and that's why it's so interesting to see what's happening with Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin, so much adoption of Bitcoin actually happened offline, right? It happened because people couldn't just buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, moving it from their bank account into their Coinbase account, right? That's not how most people around the world access Bitcoin, right? Most people around the world access Bitcoin because they had a friend who told them about it. And then the actual initial transaction happened offline. It actually happened in cash, right? And that is a reflection of just how immature the financial infrastructure is all over the world, right? We work a lot in Nigeria. I'll talk a little bit more about the communities where we work, but I remember, early on when we started, and it sounds so obvious in retrospect, I remember this was when the meme stocks were happening, and I remember one of our community members from Nigeria said to me, you really should, we need more exposure to Bitcoin. How do you make it so that GoodDollar as a token gives us more exposure to what happens with Bitcoin? And I said to him, I was like, well, why would you want that volatility? And he goes, I can't buy GameStop. I was like, oh, obviously. Right. Which just is an indication of how in today's world where information is so democratized and there really is people know about a lot of things now. People all over the world know about a lot of things, and many people are hyper aware of all of the different wealth generation opportunities that they are left out of, that they are not exposed to, that they are unable to access, etc. And I think that's been one of the most interesting findings through the experience of building GoodDollar, is actually really seeing how around the world, how people see digital assets, how they view markets, how they view currency, how they view how that functions within their own community context. And understanding that for so many people around the world, their use of crypto and blockchain is going to be fundamentally different than how we think about it in the US, just because the capital markets context is completely and totally different.
Yeah, and I think one of the great things that you have built is both the access to this UBI, but also the wallet infrastructure that you built is something that most people with a very small amount of training can actually learn how to get their own wallet, have custody of that money, and then begin to have access to, whether it's exposure to Bitcoin or Ethereum or something else. Like that, it really unlocks beyond just the UBI. Like the product that you built really unlocks so much more. Wonder if we can maybe go into, you just mentioned success stories, but in the last 5 years, I know there's been so many communities that have been impacted in a positive way by this work. But I know we've talked about before several stories of communities where they've taken it to the next level, where people are beginning to build local utility for the token, whether that's stores or mobile minutes and many things. So I'm sure you have some favorites. So would love to hear a few.
Definitely. So I would say that just to provide a little more context for the audience, I'd say that, the GoodDollar system really is meant to be a very simple wallet onboarding DApp through which you're distributed free GoodDollar tokens every single day. And once you have those free GoodDollar tokens, they actually have a known price. You can use them in DApps. You can trade them on DEXs. You can build businesses around them. You can donate or crowdfund with them. And what actually makes GoodDollar interesting is like the money happens within a social network, right? The money happens within the social context of all of the other hundreds of thousands of people around the world that have actually also onboarded into GoodDollar and create a set community with whom you can exchange, begin to corroborate and exchange. And so we've onboarded around, I think it's almost 1 million people now from over 181 countries over the past 5 years, and which is a great feeling, and but never enough. And I think the most interesting, gratifying part around all of that is actually seeing how when you are distributing money so freely that it creates opportunities for people who want to create their own opportunities, if you will. And so we'll talk a little bit. I mean, 2 of my favorite examples are actually based around education and commerce, right? So I'll actually start with the commerce one, because I think this is, people always want to know, how do I use GoodDollar to buy bread, right? How do I use GoodDollar to buy bread? And so I'd say we've seen 2 really interesting commerce use cases emerge out of GoodDollar, both of which I think we hoped for, but you never can predict that something like this actually is going to happen. The first is actually using GoodDollar as a medium of exchange, and particular community contexts where there's a lot of commerce but not a lot of money. Okay, so this actually comes out of the community currency school of thinking, right? Which is that in many communities all around the world, there are the people, there are the resources, there are the needs, but actually what's missing is money that actually unlocks the value of that economy, right? And so I mentioned favelas in Brazil earlier. And one of the most interesting things has actually been seeing how GoodDollar has been adapted as a medium of exchange in a few of these different favela neighborhoods in Brazil that actually already operate sort of community centers that run on barter or favors or IOUs or actually traditional credit as well, right? And so there's a number, I'll give a shout out now to Professor Christiane from Naduc in Coragino, Brazil, who has really been one of the most inspiring entrepreneurs I've met on my journey, if you will. She runs a center for women in it's a poor community in a favela in Brazil. And it's really focused on women's empowerment. And obviously, when you're dealing with domestic abuse and with families, money is critical to women's empowerment. And so Chris has focused on using Web3 tooling and blockchain to provide a competitive edge for the women that participate in her program, many of them have actually started to make goods, which then they sell for good dollars to one another, etc. They've learned how to save together, so done community savings together. They've learned how to actually cash out through decentralized exchanges, so moving their good dollars through, from into ETH, into stablecoins, into the real, which actually goes into the bank account, right? So that's a great example of GoodDollar becoming a functional community currency in a community where you're really trying to unlock the value, right? An extension of that has actually been mobile minutes, which again, we were very much inspired by M-Pesa in Kenya, which is an epic, story of lore around how we can use new build economies based around non-fiat currencies, right? And mobile minutes has actually been another great use case for GoodDollar, primarily in West Africa, where we see people buying and selling airtime for good dollars and really circulating it within Facebook groups of their communities. So they, an aspiring airtime entrepreneur will create a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group with his friends and family. He'll say, guys, I'm selling airtime. All you need to do is download these, download this wallet, get these tokens, and then you can get these tokens for free and you can buy them for me, right? And so we've actually seen hundreds of different airtime sellers emerge throughout primarily Ghana, Uganda, West Africa, like a few different key countries in West Africa, that have become airtime sellers where it becomes part of their stack of what they're offering to their communities, right? And we've worked with a really great company called Phone Bank to do that, which is really focused on creating, a good marketplace for buying and selling crypto for airtime. So those are the two commerce use cases, which I think really show how people are using GoodDollar in the real world to basically improve their real life economic standing, right? There's also the question of digital education, digital learning, using GoodDollars in a digital context. And I think this has also been really gratifying to see how many community change makers exist already out there in the world that really see blockchain and Web3 as a whole as a pathway to a better financial future for themselves, and are proactively looking for ways to bring their communities along with them, to bring their peer groups along with them, right? And we've seen, there's one community that we've seen so many different interesting education groups develop around GoodDollar, but there's one in particular that really stands out, just run by this man named Frank in Cameroon. And what Frank has done is he's taken this concept of basically a traditional Cameroonian context of saving circles called tontines, where the goal is actually to create credit, right? To have community source credit. And the way that you do it in places where there's no banks is you crowdfund, right? You crowdfund from the community so people actually save together. And then when a member of the group needs to take a loan, they're able to do so from the community pot, right? And so this is not new. This is an old community finance technology that's existed for thousands and thousands of years. It's used all over the world in different implementations. And what Frank has actually done is he actually built a financial education program that's for his community in Cameroon, that's based around collecting good dollars and saving in good dollars, and then actually taking the saved pool of good dollars and beginning to invest it in different decentralized finance protocols, right? So actually taking community-owned stake and beginning to use it to deploy liquidity and to earn fees, or to take it to access a loan through Compound or Aave, right? So this is a great example of, again, 30, I think there's 25 to 30 people in each group that Frank organizes, 25 to 30 people that are basically on their phones in a non-custodial wallet, claiming the decentralized currency. They're pooling it together. They're aggregating their financial potential through pooling it together. They're using these digital tools to actually recreate what's an offline behavior, right? And I think that has been, I'd love to see more of that happen, right? Because it's like, and also, we're lowering the cost of losing, right? Through operating in that model. And it really creates a fertile ground for people to experiment. And once you've been in Web3 for so long, that's what we're up to, right? Like it's all an experiment, right? So how are you actually enabling the users to experiment in a way that is safe, that is fun, that is communal, that meets their existing offline patterns and needs? So those are some examples.
Those are some great examples. And I think, that last example there kind of proves out exactly what you were hearing from that other gentleman before. Like, how do we get more exposure to Bitcoin or other investments? Well, as a community, let's come together and let's all have some exposure to that through DeFi but with GoodDollar being the key that really unlocks that. And I think that's just such a powerful real world use case. I mean, for all the listeners out there that have been wondering what's the real world use case for crypto, one of the biggest things is UBIs and access to banking for the unbanked. Like 100% real world, real people out there need it every day. Like a vast majority of everything else is just a casino. And but you mentioned risk and some of the struggles some of those folks can have, but that brings to mind, I know in December you all did have an exploit, and I don't want to give any airtime to the assholes that stole from UBI protocol, but I'm sure that you did learn some lessons from that, and I think they could be valuable to our listeners out there that are building tools out there that could also experience an exploit. So would love to hear a little bit about those lessons learned and how you do things different as you're redeploying and moving forward.
Well, you know what they say, that no good deed goes unpunished. So, no, in all seriousness, obviously exploits, hacks, they're a part of working in Web3. They're a part of doing business, right? So I think the first thing that I would say to all the builders out there is it's probably not a matter of if, it's probably a matter of when and how bad. And you need to prepare for that. Both, mentally, of course, but also in terms of doing whatever you can in your development and your security process to remember that there are bad actors out there that are looking to take advantage. And it doesn't matter whether you're on an impact maker podcast like this or whether no matter what you're building, that there are people out there who are looking to take advantage regardless of the mission, right? So I'd say be prepared. I'd say that the other kind of key saying is like within every crisis, there's an opportunity, right? And I think that this has definitely been true in our case, right? Which is that, of course, we initially built an initial version of the protocol in a very experimental way. We initially launched it in 2020, and we've learned a lot in the 4 years since then in terms of, things we would have done differently, right? Things we would have done differently in terms of the token model, requests from the community that we've gotten in terms of how they're using the currency that would have informed our work. And of course, the rest of the world goes on, right? And there's a whole global context of the entire financial system and the crypto industry that's happening all around us. And you have to adapt. You have to adapt as well, right? So to expand on that, stablecoins have actually really emerged as like the killer use case for crypto and emerging markets, right? And it's been fascinating to see the demand for the digital dollar, right? The demand for USDC, the demand for USDT, the trust in those currencies. And I think another key insight has been, so like when we started, that was let's say not the case, right? Stablecoins hadn't established themselves as one of the key, use cases of crypto. I think the other thing that hadn't been established is, I think now we actually see speculation as a feature, not a bug, right? So I think, coming off of 2017, 2018, like so many ICOs, so many overpromises, under delivering, so much volatility, so many terrible stories about, retail investors getting the short end of the stick, losing their shorts, all the things, right? It's like the volatility of token markets got a really bad rap because for plenty of good reason, right? But now we see what's happening with meme coins. And people love meme coins because it turns out speculative communities can be fun as long as you're not marketing them as like a particular financial return, right? So I think, and GoodDollar was actually designed, and of course we got feedback from the community about like how they want the protocol to work differently, what would be more effective for them, etc. So I'm just using this as an example to say that like these are all context changes that have, informed where do we go from here, right? So when a crisis happens, there's an opportunity to look at a lot of things that you took for granted as entrenched in the way of being, and you're kind of freed from a lot of those shackles, and it enables you to think a bit differently. I'd say as a third thing, it's like as a builder, it forces you to ask a lot about like what you owe to whom, right? And what you owe to your community. And I think for us, for myself, for my, for Hadar, my technical co-founder in this, for Yoni Asio, who's been our like spiritual guide and our primary donor for this, we feel as if we owe it to the community to do whatever we can to recover a healthy, functional GoodDollar. And so we've been working really, really hard to develop a new version of the protocol that's going to be launched actually over the next few weeks, which is like new contracts, new mechanisms, new contracts, new mechanisms, kind of a new architecture that will hopefully bring back an even more exciting version of GoodDollar by the summer. So that's how we're dealing with it. We go on.
That's super exciting, and testament to the leader you are and the whole team that you see that you do owe your community something, that just because you experience an exploit like that you can't just walk away and say, sorry community, I guess we're done. That you get back up and I remember speaking to you at the time, and even then, like, you're just like, yeah, well, we're going to redeploy. This thing is coming back. I don't know how yet, but this is not the end. This is not how this story ends. And so I think that's huge. But
and I'd actually like to take a minute to say thank you to all of the people like yourself, but many, many people who have reached out to, not just made an effort to reach out to us and show their support for what we've done, but also so many key partners that we have and stakeholders throughout the Cello ecosystem, Mento Labs, other community partners who have really showed their support when we really needed it. And so people recognizing the positivity of our work and the value of our work and showing support for that has been really critical to finding the motivation and the wherewithal to keep going. And so I'd like to say thank you for everyone who's been so kind.
Thank you for persevering. And on that note, we should probably just have a little more fun and play on the podcast, because that was a little bit of a heavy segment there. I always hate to talk about the bad times, but like I said, we can learn from them. So I want to introduce you to my co-host, Shmolak. Hello, Anna. So nice to meet you. I hope someday we monsters can have a UBI because I think that would really help all my monster friends. So maybe one day we can work on that together. But I just wanted to drop in, ask a few questions, brighten things up a little bit. I have a feeling this first one you may have strong feelings about, but yes or no, pineapple on pizza?
No.
See?
I'm a New Yorker. No way.
I was going to say, I figured from New York, there's no way she puts pineapple on pizza.
No
but,
way.
gotta always start with something fun. Do you have a favorite animal?
Ooh, I love manatees.
Oh, those are really, really cool animals for sure. For sure. I like it. And what about, do you have a favorite public good?
I mean, GoodDollar. Free money is a public good. Favorite public good, the air. I mean, like I love all. Listen, it's hard to choose a favorite public good. That's what makes them good. They're all really good, right? So, obviously our planet is the number one public good. That is my favorite. And anything we can do to protect and improve that is worth saving.
I couldn't agree more. I tell all the guests that we monsters can live in very, very hot climates, so we're not so worried, but you humans are in real trouble.
Yep.
So, we've talked a lot about a lot of things today, or you and John have, and, sometimes life is tough. Sometimes things don't work out. Sometimes so much is out of our control, but it's very clear that you have an ability to stay optimistic. So wondering if you have any tips for staying optimistic in this crazy world.
Ooh. Well, it's very simple. I think to be cynical is a cop-out, right? So to be cynical is just to be lazy. It's a lot harder to choose hope. And it is a choice. It's definitely not the same thing as being optimistic, but to choose to be hopeful is a decision that we make every day in our actions and what we think about and how we choose to behave. And I think that in terms of tips for how to stay that way, you got to have fun. You got to practice joy, because in the hardest times, when you don't want to do anything, when you're so depressed, when there's just nothing's going your way, you need to choose actively to celebrate life and being alive and having gratitude. So those are my tips. And I would also say, those are my tips. Those are my tips. Friends help, do it with friends. Build with friends.
Can't do it alone.
Friends. Can't do it alone.
Can't do it alone. And yeah, hope is such an important thing out there. And sometimes hope is all that someone out there might need. So, to all the listeners out there, hopefully you give a little hope to somebody else. It might be just what they need to make it to tomorrow. So, Well, thanks for chatting with me. I'll hand it back to John, but really nice to meet you, and hope we meet again someday.
I can't wait. Want to ask you questions about your favorite animals? That was cute. That was cute.
Thank you.
No, but I really mean that about what I said. You can't do it without the friends. You can't do it without the laughs. If you don't have the laughs, you'll never keep it up. You'll never find it. So that's one of that is, 7 years now working in crypto. It's like friends are what make Web3 worth it. The people are what make Web3 worth it. It's certainly not the technology.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I know we're right about time, but maybe just in closing, anything exciting out there in crypto that you'd like to, chat about for a second? Things that got you excited outside of the GoodDollar, and there is a lot of moving parts, like you say, and I'm sure that you're learning all sorts of new things and always seeing something new. So, anything you want to share?
Yeah, so I actually think a lot of stuff that's happening with, I mentioned stablecoins and real world assets. And I think a lot of the work that's happening in the financialization of some of the core financial primitives in terms of currencies and treasury bonds, I think all of these are real unlocks. I think that many of us who have worked in this space a long period of time recognize that, like the tokenization of everything is decades long, right? And actually, like when we're talking about money, many people want to use commodities, assets, utilities that they're already familiar with. And I think the maturation of that space is really exciting. I think we're going to see a reemergence of where online communities translate into offline communities. And I think NFTs were actually just like a little bit of a preview into that. And I think that use case is, especially in a world where people are lonely and seeking connection and seeking community, that this is an area of crypto that is still super underexplored, where I think we're going to start to see some really interesting businesses come out of there. And I think it's also really critical to watch what's happening with wallet. Like, so much wallet tech is actually really interesting. I'm thinking, because this is an area, so critical to the user experience in terms of and offering really the context of user education of what is a wallet, what are these assets, what can I do with them. I'm thinking actually about the work, we build on Cello, so we've been following a lot of what Opera has been doing with their new wallet browser called MiniPay, right? So Opera is actually a browser company. They serve hundreds of millions of people around the world, and they've built a really simple to use digital wallet extension, which is really based around, like fiat currencies, right? Dollar denominated currencies or fiat currencies. And it's just one of the best examples of an app that I've seen that actually looks and feels like Venmo and has a real distribution channel, right? So I think more and you start to see how MiniPay is actually featuring, the different financial instruments that are being offered by the crypto projects, right? So it's like one of the first times I've seen kind of the blockchain building Legos come together in the way that I think we kind of all dreamed for it to work, where there's like this currency infrastructure, there's this application infrastructure, there's the user interface infrastructure, and you're actually all are done by different members of the stack, and but come together to offer something that's really compelling to people who otherwise don't have access to 3% yield, right? So those are the things I'm excited about, seeing some of those core areas mature. And obviously, as an American, I'm really looking forward to the next few months of hopefully greater regulatory clarity around the industry and crypto not being such a dirty word here, because I think that is critical just to creating a better working environment for us and accessing capital and recruiting employees and talent, and bringing the best of the best to our industry.
Yeah, certainly. Also, living here in the U.S., I'm right there with you. Like, it's really time for us to embrace this technology, and I really hope that we start to see some regulation that will help with that. Because if they chase us all to another country, another location, or at least that all of our companies are ashore, it seems like we missed out on it, and that's sad for a country that could be doing so much in the world to lead, and we have so much. We're so fortunate here. Like, it is for every American out there, if you're not grateful today, like, I don't know what you're thinking, because we are so like rich in so many ways. And
absolutely.
And it's time we can use this technology to really begin to share that with other people, I think.
Yeah. It'll be great when, I think the other thing that this is like a little techie and a little bit of a throwback, is like, it finally feels like a lot of the infrastructure stuff is like getting built, right? So it's like as someone who's been working on the application layer for many, many years, that has been such a struggle in terms of designing cool applications and bringing them to market and making them useful for people, has actually been the immaturity of the technological infrastructure, the lack of interoperability, the lack of good tooling around improving the experience of interacting directly on chain. And so I know it hasn't been a major theme in this 24 bull market cycle, but I actually think we're going to start to see DApps again. Like, I actually think that we're going to, this might be the year of the L2, and that's certainly where a lot of money has gone, is into the L2 ecosystem. But hopefully all of that is actually going to lead us to the desired end state, which is better chains with access to capital to build DApps on. And I really believe that's going to happen. We're going to start to see that again in the next 18 months or so.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many, so it just feels like there's so much builder energy right now, and some tremendous builders out there. And they have so many of these little Lego blocks that they can build into some really solid infrastructure at the end of the day. And I think, along with you, excited for it. It's time for DApps to be both out there but also useful, and so it is exciting times. So
never boring. It's never boring.
It's never boring. That is for sure. Crypto is not boring. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's never boring. But really, to wrap things up here, really, really appreciate you coming on the pod and chatting with me. So wonderful to hear your story and the story of all the impact that you've had in the world. It really is a remarkable journey, and so happy to call you a friend, and look forward to continuing to connect and build together and really make the world a better place, because that's what we're here for. So
definitely, Jon, thank you for having me. The appreciation and admiration is definitely mutual. You have been a huge asset to, being the person that brings, for example, public goods funding from a theory into a reality, into money in someone's smart contract, and the people that are the operators that get it done are the critical piece to building anything that works. And so the mutual admiration is felt, and thank you for this work that you're doing to highlight those of us fighting the good fight. And thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, that was a great time. We'll make sure to put Anna's information in the show notes. I'm sure you can find her on Twitter and Farcaster and probably any place else you want to hang out and connect. And with that, we'll talk to you again next time. Appreciate y'all. Thanks so much.
Bye.